I listened to the worst rated albums of 2024. This album could potentially trick you into thinking that it's kind of fun. Every attribute that I like about music was not present here. And today we're gonna talk about it. For those of you that don't know, there's this website called Album of the Year, which is basically Letterboxd, but for albums. If you don't know what Letterboxd is, it's basically Album of the Year, but for movies. On Album of the Year, every album has a critic score and a user score. And they recently made available a list of the 25 worst rated albums of 2024 based off critic scores. Technically, I didn't look for a user score one. I just looked up like worst album of the year rated albums, and then this is what popped up. But from that list, I listened to the top 6 albums, and I have my thoughts, and I'm gonna share them with you guys. I was initially gonna do top 5, but then 2 of the albums I've already reviewed on this channel, so it kind of felt cheap. I'm not doing top 7 because I didn't listen to the 7th. I just chose 6. Okay, just roll with it. Guys, how old is too old to be making songs about sex? Because JT talks about fucking way too much to be a father of 2 on this album. The premise of everything I thought it was is pretty clear, literally just based off the title. You look at the album cover, it's Justin Timberlake looking out at this beautiful landscape, which you could assume is meant to symbolize like his fruitful career in both acting and music and whatever. His life, basically. Now that he's in his early 40s and he's had such a long career, this album is sort of meant to serve as a retrospective on his career. And that's shown on the opening track, Memphis, which is a song that has a sentiment that is kind of nice. He talks a little bit about his mental struggles, but in a very surface level manner. It kind of gives me like Lonely by Justin Bieber vibes. With the title, it's pretty clear the direction that the album is gonna go in. So this opening track is a little bit on the nose. You know, from here the album kind of devolves and you kind of lose sight of that message. But regardless, I think it is a nice sentiment. If I were to summarize this album in one sentence, it would be that Justin Timberlake needs to grow up. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm not saying that in regards to like his personality and his manhood, his life. I'm a 21-year-old kid. Obviously, he's smarter, older, wiser than me. But he's still making music like he's in his 20s. And it's just kind of weird. Like, I don't mind listening to them because, I'm in my 20s, so there's a part of it that I resonate with. But just knowing that he's a married father of 2, talking about some, ooh, all the girls on this dance floor are bad, they're nutty. Like, dude, don't you have a mortgage to pay or something? Justin Timberlake's oldest son is 9 years old, which means he's around that age where he's gonna get bullied for his dad talking about his sex life in his music. There's so many songs where Justin Timberlake's talking about this sexy ass woman, and it's like, it kind of has to be the kid's mom, right? So, I don't know. I'm just so glad I'm not Justin Timberlake's son. I will say though, Justin Timberlake is still surprisingly smooth with all his vocals and just his presence on this album. Sonically, I actually really mess with this album, but he just doesn't do anything that's like out of the ordinary for him. It's like a tiny bit more modernized, but then there's a lot of moments where it just feels like he's trying to make another Sexy back. And the thing with Justin Timberlake's popular songs, especially like the more recent ones, is that they're very different than like his B-sides and just like deeper tracks on his albums. Look at the 2020 Experience, for example. Really successful album when it came out because it had, in my opinion, one of the best pop songs of all time on it. But I listened to the whole thing at the gym the other day. It's kind of mid, bro. The stuffers on Justin Timberlake's albums are really just repetitive dance tracks that you could tell he kind of wants to be thrown on in a club and just like, you know, let everyone have a good time. So I respect that as an idea, but when it comes to judging albums as albums and not albums as soundtracks to nightlife or whatever, I am going to look at them a little bit differently. You know, a lot of these songs are super redundant. It's this brand of like classic dance pop music that is like equal parts sexy and marketable. It really treads that line very smoothly. I haven't listened to Man of Woods. I haven't heard great things about it, but even 2020 felt a little more, or I guess a little less about sex. If you told me that Justin Timberlake released Justified in like 2003, 2004 or whatever, and then this album came out 20 years later, he released 3 albums in between, he's now a married father of 2. I keep saying married father of 2 because I just want to stress that he's a married father of 2. I would be kind of shocked. Because the truth is, you can swap them out and they're like pretty much the same. There's no real maturity difference there. Anyways, I do have more albums to review, so I'll keep the rest of this pretty short. I guess my biggest takeaway from this album would be that Justin Timberlake still fully has it as a performer and as a presence on a track, but so do so many other artists right now. And those other artists will also create less redundant albums with more impactful lyrics and more memorable hooks. This album got a critic score of 49 and the user score of 43. I'd probably give it like a 5. The big issue with it is really big, in my opinion. It matters a lot. But I've heard so much worse. We're going to talk about albums that are so much worse than this one, if I'm being honest. At least when you listen to this, you feel like Justin cares. And that matters. We Still Don't Trust You is an album that I didn't even know existed. Can't believe they dropped another album. Like, why not just make it a deluxe? But we'll get into it. The truth is, I haven't listened to We Don't Trust You, so listening to We Still Don't Trust You was a little bit weird. I felt like I was kind of missing something, to be honest, but I didn't have the time to listen to that one first. So I'll get to it at some point. From the few songs that I do know off of We Don't Trust You, there's a lot more energy to them. And I'd imagine that that album also has a lot of songs that pull out really nicely, you know, to be like these like one-off bangers. I cannot say the same thing about this one. A lot of these are really chill, kind of taking a more R&B approach. And when it comes to the instrumentals in particular, they play it pretty safe. Which is a bummer because I feel like when you have a name as big as Metro Boomin on an album, you're gonna expect a lot. And he's lived up to that in the past a lot. I listened to the Across the Spider-Verse album recently. Oh my god, it's fantastic. While I'm not fully versed in Metro Boomin's discography, he does something on this album that I'm not really used to seeing him do, which is using practical drums. Different parts in each song will kind of go back and forth between like practical, a drum kit sound, and then his usual like 808 trappy type sounds. And on paper, I think that's such a cool idea, and like the beats alone, it does kind of work sometimes, but the way that Future's vocals tend to be processed, you know, he has a very distinct sound, and it's a distinct sound that kind of clashes with those practical drums. I don't really like the mesh at all. Now, if you guys know me, you'll probably know that I'm a pretty big sucker for The Weeknd. So I'm not gonna come out and say that I didn't like any of these songs. You give Abel a melody and tell him to cook, it'll be fire, but it's not gonna save a song, nor can it save an album. And he has like so many, he has like 5 features on this album, like what the fuck? Low key, if you removed Future from this album and had The Weeknd like right to track with all these instrumentals, it honestly could have been a lot better. Because then you also get more leeway to like have more creative freedom with the melodies and stuff. I feel like I just ramble a lot, but to sum up, I guess I could say, when the production on an album is this low-key, and you have a vocalist as one note as Future, like I'm not saying he's a bad rapper, but in my experience with him, he does kind of have a shtick that's pretty clear. It's not gonna feel very substantial. You know, the entire first disc of this album was pretty bland. Let me know if you guys think I should re-listen to it, but considering it's one of the worst albums of the year, according to Album of the Year, a website with that name, they know about albums of the year. A lot of the songs on this project aren't that bad, but it just kind of feels like Metro and Future didn't sit on them long enough to like really crack them. You know what I mean? They feel like an afterthought. Which is not good, because it's one thing to have the deluxe version that's like that, or to have like a couple tracks off an album that's like that, but if the foundation of the album feels like an afterthought, then why even make it in the first place? If I'm being honest, this thing is so bloated, it low-key could have been condensed into just a deluxe version for We Don't Trust You. I don't know why they didn't do that. This album has a 48 critic score, a 58 user score. I'm honestly feeling like a 4. There's another album on here that is so much worse, and I listened to that one first, so this really was not that bad. It just was like not that memorable. Vultures 1 is the 4th worst rated album of 2024. I do actually have a designated review for this album that I released earlier in February, I think. So you can check that out for my more extensive thoughts on the album. I still feel like that review holds up. But I'll summarize it for this portion of the video. This album has its issues. You know, thematically, it's not very strong. Not like a lot of the messages that Kanye is getting across here. But there are a few songs that I enjoy. You know, Carnival is popular. I don't like Carnival. I like Back to Me, though. Back to Me's a bang. Ty Dolla $ign on this album is also great. Fully delivers on all of these hooks. And, you know, the truth is, Kanye, at least he's, like, kind of trying-ish. We'll get into Vultures 2 because, spoiler alert, Vultures 2 is also on this list. But listening to Vultures 2 honestly just made Vultures 1 look so much better. To Kanye standards, this is still a pretty bad album, but at least it wasn't unlistenable, you know? 43 critic score, 47 user score. I'd probably stick with my 6 that I gave him in the video. It was definitely a lot more hit or miss compared to Kanye's other albums. But again, there's still some hits. Back to Me slaps. I remember how huge of a phenomenon the first Eternal Take was when I was in high school. Everyone was talking about it. So much so that I listened to it. I never listened to hip-hop in high school, but I just felt like I had to because literally everyone wouldn't shut up about it. And from what I remember of that album, it wasn't that bad. There's a very clear vision with the vibe, and I think it executed it pretty well. I cannot say the same thing about this album, though. The first thing I want to address is Lil Uzi does this thing particularly a lot on this album where his flow is like out of sync with the beat, and I don't know if that comes from like a lack of musicality on his part or if he just doesn't care, but like I don't really get the appeal of that. You could tell me that he was just spitting whatever rhymes and verses into a mic without hearing anything and they just put a random beat over it, because there's like no cohesion between his vocal track and the beat ever really at all. This album is overstimulating over substance. You know, there are a lot of different things going on with the instrumentals, but each song just feels so like flat and lifeless. There's like nothing going on with his lyrics at all, and to me it just feels like they're trying to get reactions out of people and like hype everyone up without creating actual good music. And there's some songs in his other projects that I like. I have some notes on like the songs individually, pointing out like these little things that I don't like about him, but I don't really feel like it's necessary to get into that. This isn't a full review. Oh, I do want to mention there is a Big Time Rush feature on this song, which I kind of hate because I'm pretty sure it's not even them. Like, I saw an interview clip on TikTok of him talking about how he got Big Time Rush to do that little intro, but it does not sound like them.
Hey, you're not Big Time Rush.
Dude, you're not Big Time Rush.
We're Big Time Rush.
Like, I think I hear Logan. Maybe that's James with like some weird effect on his voice. It sounds AI generated, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna make these grand statements about Lil Uzi as an artist because I'm just not insanely familiar with him, but from the songs I've heard from him and from this album, it feels like it refined Lil Uzi's sound down to like a science and just sucked all of the soul out of it. Not that his songs felt particularly personal before, but they're just definitely not at all personal now. The hooks on this album are also incredibly boring. A lot of the times it feels like they're just repeating one line over and over again in hopes that people will like remember it and sing along to it next time they hear the song. And it's just incredibly redundant. Even when songs on this album start differently, they find themselves in a similar place like a minute in, which is Uzi hitting a very repetitive, short line, simple flow with the same 808s and trap hi-hats. If there is any deeper meaning to this album, please let me know if I'm missing it. But I really hated it. Like, literally every attribute that I like about music was not present here. There's nothing to latch onto as a listener other than just pure ear stimulation. It got a critic score of 41 and a user score of 33. I'm gonna hand it a 1. I hated this album so much. Vultures 2. Again, I have a formal review of this album on my channel. Go check it out if you want to hear more extensive thoughts. But to summarize here, this album was unfinished. And if an album is unfinished, I'm not gonna respect it because you didn't even care enough to finish it. It's like going to a restaurant and having the waiter bring out a piece of half-cooked chicken. Like, do you expect me to like that? Do you expect me to want to eat that? Apparently there are changes that were made to this album. I did not care to listen to it again because the changes were made a day after. So if you're gonna make changes a day after, I don't see why you couldn't just push the release. It was already pushed 5 months. Like, just push it a little more. Critic score of 40, user score 31. I'm gonna stick with my rating of a 2. The only reason that I'm giving it more than Eternal Will Take Two is because there's at least a little bit of variety. Like, there's moments from this album that I remember. And honestly, a few moments that I thought were kind of cool. And yeah, Vultures 2, don't listen to it. Because if you keep listening to this album, then Kanye's gonna think it's okay to just release half-baked shit. And he's never gonna care about making music again. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived to the worst rated album of 2024. Any guesses on what it is? Someone please. It's 143 by Katy Perry. Yeah, no surprises here. This album sucks. I could literally break down every song on this album. I have notes on all of them that I took while listening. This chorus is so empty and lame and boring and horrible. The fact that it was the single should have told us right away that this album's gonna suck. It is a plain and shallow representation of feminism, in my opinion. Low-key, kind of a cool vibe on this song. Her vocals are still really boring and horrible, but I respect the effort to try and make something different. And there are certain moments where I'm like, oh, okay. I see the vision. That said, the chorus lyrics are horrible and the Savage verse kind of sucks. Kind of Dark Horse-ish, but I think that sound and that vibe is just kind of outdated at this point. Up to this point in the album, the production has been very flat. Each song feels like it's missing one strong melody or like instrumental track that can make them fuller and feel more complete. So it's not really a problem with the individual attributes of the song, it's just missing stuff. Katy Perry is a really great singer, but her tone is not very unique at all. I've met about 20 Katy Perry since coming to college. The truth is, Katy Perry has probably always been this shallow. We as a collective just know what it's like to get more out of our pop music now, so we could see how empty and lifeless these songs are. Fuck, this is really bad, bro. What are these lyrics? Oh my god. Oh my god. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck is this? Why am I listening? Why am I still listening to this album? Why? Are you real or are you artificial? That's really the best hook you could have come up with. I hate that so much, dude. It's just so like, ugh. I would almost rather her just say fake. Like, at least embrace the simplicity of that. Don't try to make it fancy by saying artificial. I do kind of like the JID or JID, how do you say that? His feature, fire. I should probably check out more of his stuff. I would never wish anything bad on you guys watching this video, but low-key, I think if you haven't listened to this album, you should listen to it. Because I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I feel like I'm not that difficult to please when it comes to pop music, but this album will definitely help anyone who listens to it distinguish between good and bad pop songs. Sometimes it takes something really bad for you to realize that a lot of the mid stuff is not as mid as you think it is. Do you know how much of a slog it is to listen to pop music that is this repetitive and this bad. Like, by the end of track 3, I pretty much lost all hope for the rest of the album because her perspective on it was so shallow, the production wasn't doing anything insane, you kind of just knew what you were in for the rest of it. This album could potentially trick you into thinking that it's kind of fun because it is EDM pop music, which is what got Katy Perry famous in the first place. And it's not that it doesn't feel like Katy Perry, it's that this woman is now in her late 30s, going on Call Her Daddy, talking about how important this album is to her, marketing it as this feminism cornerstone album. And I'll tell you what, the feminist movement stood still the day this album came out. I'm not gonna say it went backwards, because that's kind of mean. But in a way, isn't Insignificance worse? The outro song Wonder is also really bad. Haha, shocker. It's supposed to be like this low point of the album, you know, really getting to the core of what it stands for. Except it's not about feminism, she's just asking if you lose your innocence when you get older. Katy Perry, you were like 40 years old. You tell me. I'm not even being ageist. It's just like, at what point can you stop making the young and dumb type of songs? And this song really bothered me because it just highlighted everything wrong with this album. Katy Perry just refuses to move forward. And when you look at all the artists that are around right now that have been around for a while and have managed to continuously see success, they've grown and evolved with their music. Compare Taylor Swift's most recent album to her first one. Night and day. Look at Kanye West. Night and day. Katy Perry, night and night. It's like 8:30 and 8:35 in regards to her perspective on the album. The sound of this album, you know, the instrumentals feel like they're from 2012, not in a good way, and even down to using the same producer because she just doesn't want to experiment, doesn't want to do anything new. She's trying to latch on to her popularity from the past rather than trying to expand. I haven't listened to any of the new Carly Rae Jepsen, but even just looking at the albums she's pumping out now, you could tell they're gonna be different than her older stuff. Yeah, maybe she's not seeing the same amount of success as she used to, but at least we can respect her as an artist. That was mean. I'm sorry. I'm just in a bad mood because this album sucks. I'm gonna have to give it a 0, bro. It's not good. There's like close to no redeeming qualities about this thing. And I guess that's what we'll wrap this video up. Comment down below your least favorite album of 2024. I'm gonna have to give it to 143. I don't think I've ever given an album a 0 before, but fuck. This sucked. I'm sure Katie's a nice person. Just want to make that disclaimer. I've never met her before, but I'm sure she's fine. It's not personal, okay? Your album sucks, that's it.
It's the most beautiful time of the year. Lights fill the streets, spreading so much cheer. I should be playing in the winter snow. I'ma be under the mistletoe.